Gracie, Cody, how are you both doing? First, Gracie, how are you doing?
I'm good. I really like the background of your house with all the picture frames and stuff.
Thank you. You have a more simplistic approach. You just have one photo per se.
I know, because I've got it is actually from David Lynch, but I've got a very small apartment, so I don't have much artwork at the moment. But yeah, who are all those people on the wall?
Oh, well, I'll answer after I pleasantly say, Cody, how are you doing there?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Great. Thank you very much. And to answer your question, Gracie, it's one of those things where before 2005, when you're writing articles, because there wasn't JPEGs and GIFs, they would send you the 8x11s. Well, luckily, my wife had the idea of buying frames, putting those photos in frames that I never threw out, and here you have a backdrop. So if I get the 8x11s of both of you, we'll put them up there. But thank you for making this movie. It really tells the story of a wonderful, wonderful institution that's responsible for music that we hear on a daily basis, but the average person doesn't know it came from this. So, Gracie, I'll go to you first. What was the impetus for this project?
Actually, I'm going to throw that to Cody because I feel like he's got the best answer for that.
Okay.
She always does. But it's a story that I'd always known about because my mum was an artist living in Montserrat in the 1970s. So she moved down there just before George Martin. And she, when the studio was around, she would make a living selling her artwork to the musicians. So I'd grown up knowing about the studio and we would go to Montserrat all the time when I was a kid. So it was just one of those things where I was sitting around one day chatting to the guys, the technicians of air. And I was like, why hasn't anybody made a film about this? And then that was kind of the start of what was a very long journey.
Right. Anything to add to that, Gracie?
No, I mean, yeah, for me, it was completely different experience coming on board because I knew nothing about Montserrat and, nothing about air studios down there. So, yeah.
That actually was leading to my next question, what you just said, Gracie. And that's, Cody, how much of the story of the studio did you know before you started production versus what we see on screen? Like, did you know 80% of that or did you know 100% of that?
No, I only really knew the studio. I knew some of the albums that had been made down there. I knew Synchronicity, I knew Every Breath You Take had been recorded there, but that was like probably the most exciting 2 weeks when the decision was, I'm going to try and make a film about this. And I obviously went over to London to ask permission from the estate, but just learning about what was made down there and, finding that footage of the Stones or Paul McCartney's home video footage was really exciting. And that's when I really realized that there was a film there because as the research was unfolding, it was really apparent that what happened to the bands down in Montserrat really shaped their relationship within the band, either it broke people up, it brought them together. So that was a really exciting point in time.
And yet again, that led to the next thing I want to know, which is that when you're putting together a project like this with A-list artists, sometimes you're at the mercy of the artists to provide the footage. Sometimes it's the record company. Sometimes it's collectors that have this kind of information and access to everything. Was it a combination of all three of them to get all this done?
Oh, it took a bit. Yeah, it was. I mean, I think to get some of the big artists, that is tricky because it doesn't matter how convincing you are or how many other people you have on board that, they might just not be in the mood to talk about something that happened for them years ago, or, you might get a day, like when Cody first got Sting, when he had such a love for the island that he was like, oh my God, yes, I want to talk about it. And then I think, with the archive, we worked with Lisa Savage, who's an archive producer, and I've worked with her before in my first film. And then we were, also really fortunate that Dave and Malcolm, who were two of the guys who kind of built the studio, they'd given Cody a bunch of archive and her mum. And then it's that, one of the best things about the whole place was that there wasn't paparazzi there wasn't people following people around, which is great for the film. But then when you're trying to show those stories,
right.
So there was a real hunt to, find, people in the bands, families, and, that kind of deep dive of asking people. And it was always like finding a golden nugget when, you got something like the Stones footage or, something that it was so exciting for us in the edit to get that kind of archive coming in. I mean, Cody's got a great story about how we got the Stevie Wonder recording.
Oh, do you mind telling that one?
No, of course not. Yeah, so when I was in that really heavy research period, I was over at my dad's house one night, and he was like, I think I've got a recording of Stevie Wonder singing at a bar in Montserrat in the attic of his house. And so he went up there and he was digging around and he came up with this cassette tape. And we got it digitized so we could hear what was on it. And it's an hour-long recording of Stevie Wonder singing all of his hit tracks and then riffing into stories about Montserrat and the studio and the staff. And it's a piece of gold. And when I spoke to Stevie's team about licensing it, it's actually apparently really common. Stevie will just get up on bars and start riffing. And I'm sure for their team, it's probably a bit of a licensing nightmare because, it's just what he loves to do. And yeah, anyway, it's a really wonderful moment in the film. We're so lucky that we found that.
When you have any kind of a project with A-list talent like this, the challenge is that first artist that you get on board, because it's kind of reflective as to who else wants to do it. It's almost like you're throwing a party and people go like, oh, who's coming? Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't the first person invited.
Yeah, we see more like a deck of cards. Who's the ace? Who are the kings? Get a few high queens in there, get a few high jacks, go back to an ace.
Who was the first artist that really came on board and endorsed it and opened up the door to everybody else?
That was Sting. I wrote to him and said, we'd love to do an interview. And I was still in development phase. Gracie wasn't attached at this point to the project. And he said yes straight away. He said, yeah, come to New York in 2 weeks' time. So I flew all the way there from Perth, Western Australia to interview him in his apartment building. So that was great. That opened so many doors. And also it was just such a wonderful interview with Sting. But the trick with getting talent for this film is you're up against everyone was touring. The Stones were touring, Elton's band was touring, Mark Knopfler was touring. And so you've got to sort of work around their schedules, and really to make a film like this, you kind of want like a 10-year period to be able to get, different people to be in the film.
Everyone has that summer break. In Australia, it doesn't really exist. I had it from my first documentary. People would be like, oh, he's gone for the summer. He'll be back in the office in September. And you're like, what? It's August. Like, what do you mean we can't come over and do an interview? So it was always like, oh, they're on tour. Oh, now it's the summer break. Now it's like, but it does. Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you do those interviews, more people kind of, come from that because you go, oh, that could be an interesting angle. Or, sometimes there's interviews that aren't in the film that, or people that we interviewed for a longer time that weren't in it as much because once we started kind of middling down what, we want the story to be, they kind of serve the purpose as research as well. But I think we interviewed like 35 or 40 people in the end.
That was actually going to be one of the next things I asked. It's like you've done this before. As somebody who tapes interviews, 5-6 days a week, you're kind of at the mercy of press days unless you have an exclusive relationship or some kind of an in. And I was wondering if all these interviews were like one-offs or any of them were part of press days when you knew that there was a junket for a new album and somebody went.
That's a really good idea, and I wish we had known that because we could have just gone to their press junket and been like, "Are you down in Montserrat?" If we'd known that. No, we we did a few kind of like 2 or 3 quick trips to London for one interview. We did the bulk of the filming in the UK and then in Montserrat and then over in America and came back, and then we had to, and that's our fault being Australian, had to do the quick dash across the quick 24-hour round trip to come, to get back from interviewing Nick Rhodes to be told, oh, Martin Knopfler can do next Wednesday, and go, all right, it's all right, we'll just go back on the plane. Whereas now, with Zoom and stuff, I don't know if people would do that.
Well, you're doing a Zoom-based interview right now. I found that people are willing to do the Zoom interviews pretty easily, but then again, the audio quality is maybe not film ready the way it would be with the camera. So you just answered another thing. So none of the interviews were Zoom-based. It's all filmed pre-pandemic.
Oh, yeah, they were all face-to-face. Yeah, which is for me the funnest part. It can be a bit scary sometimes interviewing people, but the more I'll try to keep it as relaxed and informal as possible.
Yeah, but with what I was saying about the junkets, I was thinking about it, and I interviewed Andy Summers as part of a junket 3 or 4 years ago. He had a new instrumental album. So that's what I thought the strategy was, like, oh, if we can't get that, let's see when they have the new album and tie it around it. But I guess your pitches were so convincing and people were so happy to talk about this period of their lives that.
Yeah, I mean, we did write a lot of letters, like, you know, we really did. Yeah. And I think, you know, for some people, we actually, I think, even like cut down clips and sections of things to show them. And you know, I think having Cody having, you know, the Martin estate kind of on board with the film and their seal of approval, and obviously having Universal really early on as a distributor made the film a real thing. And then it's, you know, it's also a catch-22 because my first documentary had like none of those things. And so you can kind of play the like, oh, we're just like poor filmmakers and can you do this interview? And then it's like, oh yes, it's amazing, we've got Universal, we've got all these famous people, but we're just poor filmmakers, can you just do this interview? So it's like trying to play the like, yeah.
MFN, most favored nations, comes to the table and everything gets really tough. So, you know, being mindful of your time here, I'll ask 2 last things. And first, Cody, what's next? Do you know the next project? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I've got a documentary coming out in November called Girl Like You. And then moving into, I'm working on 2 feature films at the moment, which will hopefully be shot next year, which is really exciting. And then Gracie and I are avidly trying to find our next target for a documentary. So we're working on that at the moment.
Girl Like You, is that a reference to the Smithereens?
No, it's not. It's actually a love story. We shot it over 5 years. It's about a relationship while one person's transitioning gender. So very different from Under the Volcano, you know, observational social documentary.
Gracie, I saw something on your IMDb page. Otto on Otto, is that coming out?
Yeah, that's in the last stages of filming. That's a documentary about my father. So quite personal and deep,
Sure.
But hopefully fun. And then, yeah, I've got a feature film in post-production called Seriously Red about a Dolly Parton impersonator. And I've got a comedy show I worked on as a director on Amazon at the moment called The Moth Effect, which is a really funny Australian sketch comedy by these really 2 great creators.
When you say Australian sketch comedy, is it in the neighborhood of Auntie Donna's, or is that too far?
Totally. It's Nick Boshier and Jazz Tremole. Nick Boshier kind of became quite virally famous for Bondi hipsters and then beached as bro. And him and Jazz writes a lot of kind of political sketch comedy and stuff. It's it's got Brian Brown in it. My sister Miranda's in it. It's got Bobby Cannavale, Vincent D'Onofrio. It's got great cameos, and it's, you know, like 5 sketches per 30-minute episode. So episode 5 drops this Friday.
I'm tuning in. Thank you. And the last thing I want to know, this is kind of a 2-parter for both of you. And Cody first, I wanted to know, A, your favorite of the albums recorded at that studio, and B, is AC/DC an Australian band or an English band?
So the first question, my favorite album that was recorded down there is probably Brothers in Arms, which is a really obvious one, but one of my favorite tracks of all time is a song called So Far Away. So that's probably the one that I would listen to the most. And then AC/DC is absolutely an Australian band. I wouldn't even think at all that they would be Brits. We've absolutely claimed them. And I think one of the guys in the band was actually, he used to deliver mail on my street in Fremantle, Western Australia. So no, they're completely claimed as an Australian band.
That's one of those bands where they want to claim him in this country and the other one, just like the Beatles.
Australian's born in New Zealand, but he's Australian. Nancy was also born in England, but she's Australian.
Well, Gracie, same A and B questions for you.
Oh, what was the question? Sorry.
Your favorite album that was recorded at the studio, and is AC/DC authoritatively an Australian band?
I would say because the AC/DC, one of the band members delivered mail in Fremantle in Western Australia, he definitely was Australian. Mm-hmm. And my favorite album, Two Loafers Zero, I think. I just love, I'll go Elton for that.
Good taste on both of you. Well, looking forward to both of your future projects. Thank you for your time, and congratulations on getting this documentary done without press junkets or Zoom.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a great rest of the day. Take care.
Bye, Dad.
Bye.
Paltrocast.